At 62 degrees Celsius, water evaporates from your skin faster than your body can produce sweat. Your blood thickens like honey. Your brain begins to cook inside your skull. Medical science says human survival at this temperature is measured in hours, sometimes minutes. And yet, every single day, two people wake up in this impossible heat, hold each other's weathered hands, and choose to live another day. Their names are Hassan and Amira. They are both over 80 years old, and they have not seen another human being in almost 3 years. This is not a story about surviving the impossible. This is a story about what happens when love becomes the only shelter you need, when companionship becomes the only water that matters, and when two people discover that the cruelest place on earth can also be the most beautiful, if you have the right person standing beside you. What I am about to share with you will challenge everything you believe about human endurance, about the limits of devotion, and about the strange peace that can only be found in the heart of absolute desolation. The compound where Hassan and Amira live is barely visible from a distance. It is a collection of mud brick structures, sun-bleached and half buried in shifting sand, located nearly 200 kilometers from the nearest village. There is no road leading to it, only the memory of a path that was abandoned decades ago when the last of their neighbors fled the encroaching desert. There is no electricity, no running water, no telephone. There is only the sand, the sun, and the two of them. They came here 63 years ago, as newlyweds barely out of their teenage years. The village was thriving then, a small oasis community of perhaps 200 people, sustained by an underground spring that had flowed reliably for centuries. Hassan's father had been the village wellkeeper, responsible for maintaining the ancient channels that brought water from the spring to the surface. When he died, the responsibility passed to Hassan. It was a sacred duty, a position of honor and trust. For the first 30 years, life was difficult but good. Amira bore 4 children, 2 sons and 2 daughters, who filled their modest home with laughter and chaos. Hassan maintained the well with meticulous care, just as his father had taught him. The spring never faltered, the crops never failed, and though the desert was always present, always hungry, it seemed content to keep its distance. Then the droughts began. They came slowly at first, almost imperceptibly. One year, the spring's output dropped by a few liters per day. The next year, a few more. Crops that had always grown without effort began to struggle. Animals that had grazed freely on the scrub vegetation started dying for no apparent reason. The elders said it was temporary, that the desert breathed in cycles, that the water would return as it always had. It did not return. By the time Hassan and Amira were in their 50s, the village had lost half its population. Young families packed their belongings and made the long journey to the cities, seeking opportunities that the dying oasis could no longer provide. By the time they were in their 60s, only a handful of people remained, the old, the stubborn, the ones who had nowhere else to go. Their children were among those who left. The sons went first, drawn by promises of work in the oil fields of Algeria and Libya. Then the daughters, married to men from distant villages who had no interest in a dying community at the edge of nowhere. Each departure broke a piece of Hassan and Amira's hearts, but they understood. They had spent their lives building a future for their children. They could not blame those children for pursuing that future elsewhere. "We will visit," the children promised. "We will send money. We will come back when things get better." Some of those promises were kept, at least for a while. But as the years passed and the village continued to shrink, the visits became less frequent. The letters became shorter. The phone calls, when they could reach the distant telephone in the trading post, became awkward and filled with silences that seemed to stretch longer each time. And then, 3 years ago, the last of their neighbors died. Old Kareem, Hassan's closest friend since childhood, passed away quietly in his sleep one summer morning. His wife had preceded him by 7 months. Their children had long since abandoned any pretense of returning. There was no one to bury him, so Hassan did it himself, digging a grave in the burning sand while Amira prayed and the temperature climbed to 60 degrees. That was when they realized they were truly alone. I met Hassan and Amira 6 months ago, quite by accident. I had been traveling through the region with a research team studying the expanding boundaries of the Sahara, documenting the communities that had been swallowed by the advancing desert. Most of our work involved abandoned settlements, ghost villages where sand poured through empty doorways and the only sounds were the whisper of wind through collapsed roofs. Finding living people in such a remote location was unprecedented. My first impression was that they were mirages, 2 figures moving slowly through the heat shimmer, their bodies seeming to float above the blistering sand. It was only when our vehicle drew closer that I realized they were real. An elderly man and woman, walking arm in arm toward a well that looked like it belonged in a museum exhibit. "You are lost," Hassan said when we stopped and stepped out into the furnace-like air. It was not a question. "We are researchers," I replied. "We did not expect to find anyone living this far from." "From anywhere," Amira finished, a smile crinkling the countless lines on her face. "Yes, we know. We are far from anywhere. But we are not lost. We are home." They invited us to stay for water and shade, a generosity that seemed impossible given how little they clearly had. Their main living structure was a single room with thick mud brick walls that kept the interior slightly cooler than the outside, though cooler was a relative term. A few worn mats covered the floor. A small cooking area occupied one corner. And everywhere, absolutely everywhere, were photographs. Dozens of them, perhaps hundreds, pinned to every available surface. Children at various ages, from infancy to adulthood. Grandchildren whose faces had been printed from email attachments at the trading post years ago. A wedding photo from 1961, Hassan impossibly young in a borrowed suit, Amira radiant in a simple white dress that she confessed she had sewn herself in the weeks before the ceremony. The photographs were faded, curling at the edges, but each one was carefully maintained, dusted regularly, loved. "Our family," Amira said, noticing my gaze. "They are here with us always, even when they cannot be here in person." "When did you last see them?" I asked. Hassan and Amira exchanged a look, one of those wordless communications that couples develop over decades together, entire conversations condensed into a single glance. "Our youngest daughter came 5 years ago," Hassan said finally. "She stayed for 2 days. She wanted us to return with her to Algiers. She said we were too old to live like this, that it was not safe." "And you refused." Another shared look. Another silent conversation. "This is our home," Amira said simply. "These walls were built by Hassan's grandfather. This well was dug by his great-grandfather. We have buried our parents here, our friends here, our entire lives here. How can we leave?" "But the isolation," I pressed. "The danger. What if something happens? What if one of you becomes ill?" Hassan smiled, a surprisingly gentle expression on a face that looked like it had been carved from the desert itself. "Something will happen," he said. "One of us will become ill. One of us will die. This is the nature of life. But we will face it together, as we have faced everything together for 63 years. And when the time comes, the one who remains will not remain for long. We have discussed this. We have accepted it. And we have found peace in that acceptance." I spent 3 days with Hassan and Amira. In that time, I witnessed a daily routine that was at once heartbreaking and profoundly beautiful. They wake each morning before dawn, during the brief window when the temperature drops to something approaching bearable. Hassan's joints are stiff with arthritis that has never been properly treated, so Amira helps him rise, her own hands gnarled and pained but still gentle. They pray together, facing Mecca, voices intertwined, words that have been spoken every morning for more than 6 decades. Then comes the walk to the well. It is not far by most standards, perhaps 300 meters from their living quarters. But at their age, in this environment, it is a journey that requires preparation and pacing. They dress carefully, covering every inch of exposed skin. They bring containers for water, but also a small bag of supplies, dried fruit, flatbread, a thermos of tea, in case they need to rest along the way. And they walk arm in arm, supporting each other, moving at a pace that allows them to conserve energy while still completing the trip before the sun reaches its murderous peak. "We have made this walk every day since we married," Amira told me. "In the early years, it was for the village. The women would gather at the well each morning to collect water for their families. Now it is just for us. But we still make it. We still honor the tradition." "What happens when you can no longer make the walk?" I asked. She considered the question seriously, without the evasion I had expected. "Then we will make a shorter walk," she said. "We will move our living space closer to the well. We will adapt, as we have always adapted. And when even that is no longer possible." She paused, looking at Hassan with an expression of such profound love that I felt like an intruder. "When that is no longer possible, we will have lived enough. We will be ready." Their diet consists almost entirely of what they can produce themselves. Dates from 3 ancient palm trees that have somehow survived the increasing temperatures. vegetables from a tiny garden that they water sparingly with recycled waste, dried meat from the occasional goat that wanders into their compound from God knows where, and bread, endless variations of flatbread, baked on hot stones using flour that they purchase once or twice a year during the rare trips when passing nomads agree to bring them supplies in exchange for goods or services. We eat less than we used to, Hassan admitted. Our bodies do not require as much. But we eat together, always together. Amira insists on this. She says that a meal eaten alone is only food, but a meal shared is nourishment for the soul. The afternoons are spent inside, sheltering from the peak heat that can reach 62 degrees or higher. This is when they talk, not the mundane chatter of cohabitation, but real conversations about philosophy, about memory, about the nature of existence. Hassan recites poetry from memory, verses he learned as a child that he has somehow retained through 9 decades of life. Amira tells stories about their children, about the village as it once was, about dreams she still harbors despite knowing they will never be fulfilled. I would like to see the ocean, she confessed to me on my second evening there. I have never seen the ocean. Hassan tells me it is like the desert, but made of water. I would like to see if that is true. Perhaps you still could, I suggested. If you came back to civilization with us, arrangements could be made. She shook her head, still smiling. If I left, I would never return. And if I never returned, who would tend the graves of our parents? Who would maintain the well that has given life to this place for centuries? Who would ensure that someone remembers this village existed at all? History would remember, I said. Documents, records. Documents do not remember, she interrupted gently. People remember. And as long as we are here, this place is remembered. When we are gone. She shrugged, a gesture of acceptance rather than defeat. When we are gone, perhaps it is time for this place to be forgotten. Perhaps that is part of the cycle too. On my final morning with them, I watched Hassan and Amira perform a ritual that I suspect they enact daily, though they never explicitly confirmed it. As the sun rose over the eastern dunes, they stood together at the entrance to their compound, facing the growing light. Hassan's arm was around Amira's waist. Her head rested against his shoulder. They did not speak. There was no need for words. They simply stood there, together, watching another day begin in the place they had chosen to spend their lives. After perhaps 5 minutes, Hassan turned to Amira and said something too soft for me to hear. She laughed, a surprisingly girlish sound from such an aged woman, and kissed his cheek. Then they turned away from the sunrise and began preparing for the day's walk to the well. It was, I realized, a love ritual. A daily affirmation of their commitment to each other and to this impossible existence. A way of saying, without words, I am still here. You are still here. We are still here together. And that is enough. That is everything. Before I left, I asked them if they had any regrets, about staying, about the choices that had led them to this point, about the life they might have lived if they had followed their children to the cities. Hassan answered first. I regret that I could not stop the spring from dying, he said. I was the well keeper. It was my responsibility. And I failed. You did not fail, Amira said firmly, placing her hand on his arm. The desert decides what lives and what dies. You kept the water flowing for 30 years longer than it should have. You gave the village 3 decades of extra life. That is not failure. That is a miracle. Hassan nodded, but I could see the guilt still lingering in his eyes. Some burdens cannot be set down, no matter how many years pass. Amira's answer surprised me. I regret that I never learned to read, she said. Hassan reads to me, poetry, stories, everything, but it is not the same as reading for myself. I wonder what books feel like, the words entering your mind directly instead of through someone else's voice. It is not too late to learn, I offered. She laughed again. At 83? With eyes that can barely see the photographs on my walls? No, young one. Some regrets are meant to be carried. They remind us that we are still capable of wanting more than we have. That is its own kind of gift. I left them that morning with promises to send supplies, to advocate for their situation, to do whatever I could to make their remaining years more comfortable. They accepted my promises with gracious skepticism. They had heard such promises before, from their own children, from government officials who came and went over the decades, from a world that had largely forgotten they existed. Do what you can, Hassan said as we parted. But do not feel guilty if it is not possible. We have everything we need. We have each other. We have our home. And we have the knowledge that every single day, no matter how harsh, is a day we chose to face together. I have not been able to return to them. The research project ended, funding was cut, and the chaos of life in the modern world swept me up in its relentless current. But I think about them constantly. Two figures walking arm in arm toward an ancient well, at 83 years old, at 62 degrees Celsius, in a place that the rest of the world has abandoned. Sometimes I wonder if they are still there. Statistically, given their ages and circumstances, the chances are not good. 3 years have passed since I heard any news from that region. The nomads who occasionally pass through have reported nothing, which could mean anything, that Hassan and Amira are still quietly living their impossible life, or that they have finally joined the village they spent so long tending. But here is what I believe, regardless of what has actually happened. I believe that they are together. Whether in this life or whatever comes next, I believe that two souls who found each other as teenagers and spent 63 years refusing to be separated are still walking arm in arm, still watching sunrises, still finding in each other the only shelter they ever needed. That is the lesson of Hassan and Amira. Not that humans can survive at 62 degrees, though apparently some can. Not that love conquers all, though in their case it seems to have come close. But that meaning is not found in the circumstances of our lives. It is found in the choices we make within those circumstances. Hassan and Amira chose each other, every single day, in the face of heat and isolation and abandonment and the slow approach of death. And in making that choice, they transformed a dying village at the edge of the world into something sacred. If their story has moved you, if it has made you think about your own relationships and the choices you make within them, I would love to hear your thoughts. What does devotion mean to you? What would you refuse to leave behind, no matter the cost? The comment section is waiting, and so am I. And if you found value in this journey to the heart of the Sahara, consider joining us for more stories of extraordinary lives in extraordinary circumstances. There are more tales to tell, more proof that the human spirit is capable of beauty and resilience beyond anything we typically imagine. Until next time, may you find your own companion for the walk to the well, someone whose hand fits perfectly in yours, someone who makes even the harshest days bearable. That is the real treasure, hidden in plain sight. Do not let it slip away.